Hey guys, welcome back to Chris and Retro. I told you we were going to have a guest today, and I'm pretty excited about this. Antoine goes by the street name Preacher, has joined us today to talk about his recovery journey, but also a lot of other things that he's learning in life. And we just had a conversation just before this show started that I'm like, yeah, this is the right guest to have on here. We're really setting out here today to try to change lives with our story. And we're not here as perfectionists. We're certainly not here as counselors or anything like that. What we want to do is just be fellow travelers and share with you what we've learned, some things we've learned that have worked well, and some might not have worked so well. Antoine and I just met. We met through a mutual friend, and that connection worked. We've texted back and forth a little bit, and I find his story to be tremendously powerful. So without much more, I want to welcome you to the show, Preacher. Thanks so much for being here. Tell us a little bit about your history.
So I grew up in the church and everything. My dad was the worship team leader. I played drums, and got through high school. Went to FLCC for a little bit, Finger Lakes Community College in Canandaigua, New York, and wasn't getting a job or anything. My parents kept asking me. They kicked me out, and that was the start of me doing life on my own. Finished out school, ended up getting kicked out of FLCC because I was just into partying and things like that. So I didn't know what I was going to do with my life, so I joined the Army. Went into the Army in '06. Ended up going to basic training, got out of that, went to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, ended up deploying. When I got out of Iraq, I was getting out of active duty to go into the reserves. So I moved to Oklahoma for some girl, which is never a good thing.
Everything sounded okay to that point.
Yeah.
Everything sounded survival until you said you moved to Oklahoma for a girl. And I'm like, all right, that's
yeah.
So.
And it was probably, I got there June and left December. So it was a short time there.
Yeah.
Ended up getting home, and she had taken everything in the apartment except for the futon, even took the cat. So she literally left me with.
So what was more difficult? So was Iraq more difficult than that relationship, or which was worse?
Absolutely. The relationship was a lot worse.
Okay, sounds it. So you're in Oklahoma, you have this relationship with somebody steals all your stuff, and then where do you go?
So I got a couple roommates, but it was still rocky living and everything. So I was working as a bouncer at a club there.
In Oklahoma?
In Oklahoma. Any football fans, if you guys remember, what's his name? I can't remember off the top of my head, but the quarterback in '09 for OU, I actually kicked him out of the club because he was making a drink behind the bar. So I like to Sam Bradford. So
okay.
Sam Bradford, if you're listening to this, I'm sorry.
You're not sorry. You do it again.
I definitely would. And so I ended up like, okay, I can't stay here in Oklahoma. Like, I have nothing, and I don't know really anybody. And the life of a bouncer, like we'd bounce, and then we'd go to these after parties at the bartenders' houses. And so it was a lot of like no working during the week, and then being up all weekend.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I really need to go home. So my mom, who, it's crazy how moms know us, she was like, well, I'll send you some money. And I was like, okay, thank you. She's like, don't thank me. It was your money. I was saving it when you were in Iraq. And I was like, oh, snap. Okay. So then I had met now who's my wife. And we're separated. Hopefully, gonna work it out, but you never know.
So you and your wife are now separated, you said?
Yep, since May of last year or this year. It's still 2024, so
is it
May of this year.
Can I probe on that a little bit?
Yeah, definitely.
Do you think?
May of 23. Sorry.
Okay. Was this related to your substance use, or was it just other incompatibility?
Definitely, it was incompatibility. I think because I had just gotten out of that relationship in Oklahoma, and then got with her, and right out of the relationship with in Oklahoma, I had just gotten out of another one right before Iraq, and so it was just like
Too much.
relationship after relationship, and I never really had a chance to um, figure out who I was, which
Hmm.
I think is part of the problem after we separated, because then I just went like it was crazy.
Let me ask you
Uh,
this. When we go back to like what you were talking about getting kicked out of school and then got kicked out of your house, was the kicked out of your house? And I don't mean to, I'm not trying to divide your home, your parents, but was it more leaning on your dad or your mom that kicked you out?
um, it was in a way it was both of them. I remember my mom, they had asked me to do think like watch my brother or something, and I was at FOCC. I was in Canandaigua. I'm originally from Geneva. And so I was in Canandaigua and I was hanging out with some of my friends from college. And my mom was like, I need you to come home like now. And I was like, well, I'm not going to be home. And she's like, if you don't get home, then we're going to kick you out. And I was like, yeah, whatever. 18-year-old, thought I knew
Oh,
everything.
everything, yeah.
And so I get home that night and it was raining out and everything. I remember it was homecoming day in Geneva. Get home and my dad comes. I go upstairs, start playing my Xbox, and my dad comes up. He's like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Playing Xbox." He's like, "No, we kicked you out." And I was like, "Oh,
You're serious.
okay." And like I said, it was raining that night, and I was like, "In the rain? Like really?" And so I ended up going to my buddy's house, and his parents let me stay there for a while. My grandma ended up letting me stay there, which then caused a division between my parents and my grandparents because they told her, "Hey, don't like we're trying to like teach him something."
Yeah.
Um,
Well, don't
my
you?
grandma,
The reason I was asking that is because I was just wondering if there was a connection between, your need to have these multiple relationships and maybe that event in your home, where there's like this
yeah,
sense of belonging might have been missing. You left the military, which you have a brotherhood, and now you're going. I mean, I was a bouncer in a couple different places. I was a bouncer in a big country bar down in Letchworth and some other stuff, and I understand that scene. It's not exactly a brotherhood, you know.
no,
You know,
and that's and um, I do look at the relationships and even my drug use. Like I think it does have a lot to do, and that's one thing I talk about in one-on-one therapy now is that um, just that rejection. Like, and I'm getting choked up just talking about it.
no, I understand.
Uh,
Okay.
like it's ever since because I'm a firm believer like with my addiction. Like so before I get into that, like I eventually became a student pastor, and my wife and I were like going downhill. We separated, and that's when like excuse my French, shit went crazy.
Yeah.
like it like and like I said, because I really didn't I I didn't know who I was because I went straight from high school to FLCC to the army and then like all these relationships in between. So I was either like a boyfriend, I was a soldier, I was all these different things, but I never like knew who I was as Antoine. And so when I when we got separated and I moved out on my own, I was like, oh my goodness. And it was like letting a cat outside after they haven't experienced outside. And so, um, like, I blew through whatever money I had, and because I was like buying this and buying that, because
Yeah, you're
like
free.
yeah, I like because before I was buying stuff but it was like okay, we need to like be cautious so we can
Mm,
support our family. And now I'm like, what family? Blah. And
yeah.
so I was buying clothes and I was buying games and I bought like a new TV and like it was just I was going crazy and then I started Ubering and I had met this girl when I was Ubering and like I like to help people, and so I started helping this girl, and eventually, like, and come to find out, she's smoking crack, And so then I start like going to the trap house to help her, but I'm sitting outside of the trap house and I'm
Yeah.
waiting for sometimes like 30 minutes for her to come out. And like one day, so it's funny how the name preacher comes. One day I'm sitting there, and I've done a lot of stuff at Open Door Mission in Rochester and things like that. So I'm sitting there waiting in my car for her to come out. She sends this one guy out named Mark, and he comes out and he looks at me. He's like, I know you from somewhere. He's
Oh,
like, he's like, you're that preacher man from Open Door Mission. And I'm like, yeah, that's me. So when he goes in, he says, oh yeah, that's that preacher man. So preacher stuck. And so now then she started letting me in. And when they're like, well, who are you? And I'm sitting there, I can't say Antoine because they don't know who the heck Antoine is.
mhm.
And the one thing I think is, oh, he told everybody I'm that preacher man. I'm like, preacher. And so ever since then, preacher stuck. And so I started going and hanging out inside. And then I started like meeting all these other people that were smoking. And I started building relationships with these people. And the whole time, still, though, I'm a student pastor. And so um, they kept telling me, like, hey, we don't want you to smoke. We don't want you to get into this. Look at what it's done to our life. But the entire time, I felt so distant at church because as a pastor, like, I didn't, and we were talking about it earlier, like, everything's right. You can't like show that you're going through something. Like, I'm the one people come to. So why
Mhm.
am I gonna like pour out my stuff to them? And so I was holding on to all this stuff, and the people I connected to were the people that were smoking crack
Don't you?
because they couldn't see their kids. I couldn't see my kids. They were
Yeah.
split from their family. I was split from my family.
Well, there's no expectation in those places because they they
No,
kind of have certain feelings about themselves. That's a danger for us. Is that it's not everything you're describing for me as a heavy spiritual war in your life.
absolutely.
And the thing is like when we start aligning with how people receive us as addicts, we vacillate and we screw up like crazy. I know for me, how people feel like if I start really associating my value with what other people think of me, I will blow it so bad. And a critical piece to me is my relationship with what God is to me. And to me, he's a king. And to me, he's a savior of my life. But it also doesn't mean that I don't associate with people that are in rough living because that's what I'm called to do. Like my life is to make sure that I can connect with people and show them a better way and hope and things like that. But for people like you and I, that's hard because we're still addicts. And to be around those tempting environments, we got to be careful. And the church does let people down because there's this notion that you have to be perfect and you are. Some places call it a man of the cloth, but if you're a preacher in a church and you're a youth pastor, or whatever else, they're going to hold you in some kind of, I think, false pretense. It's not really, you can't just be you've got to be some other actor. And that's
And
not
I
how,
and I think that's what killed me was because not that people put me on a pedestal, but I almost put myself on that pedestal as the student pastor, and then everybody knew me as the student pastor. So I think a little bit of that pride set into like, well, like nothing can touch me. Like, and I remember telling people at church, like, oh yeah, I met this like girl and I've been helping her out and everything's good. Like, trust me, I'm not gonna smoke. Trust me. Like, and people are like, no, you need to be careful. Like, you're going around this stuff and I was like, nah, I got it, I'm good. And then I was like, what if I could like preach the gospel to the dealer and he would like turn to Christ and then like what if I change everything? And I was going in with like yes, that could happen. Absolutely, totally. Like we know the power of Christ is and the power of the gospel is like unbelievable. Uh but not when you're extremely broken and you're pretending that you're not.
100%. The biggest people we lie to in our entire addiction is ourselves.
Absolutely.
And that whole story you told yourself was a construct to make yourself feel comfortable to keep doing what you knew you were doing to compromise the line.
Absolutely. And I what's funny is I kept like so I was saying like, oh, I've got this, I've got this. And then one day my wife and I had this huge argument and I'm sitting there and I see them smoking and the girl who I started smoking with, she smoked out of a bong. And so she set the bong down and I saw it and I was like, ah, I was like, why not? And I went and lit up. And from that moment, I was hooked. But even then, I kept the lie going because I would tell people like, so eventually I ended up living out of my car.
Hmm.
I had stepped down from being a student pastor. First, I realized there was a problem. I remember one lady who worked under me. I had brought her in and I told her just that I was because it's hard to live as a student pastor and then at night go and start you're smoking crack all the time. And so like it was starting to show. I was falling asleep at work and just
Yeah.
different things. And so I went to her and it was my last Wednesday youth group. And I remember that message I gave was the worst message I've ever given.
Mhm.
Um, and all I could think of, I can't wait to get out of here so I can go smoke.
Yeah.
Um, and
I
she
feel
told
like
me,
I actually feel that like urge as you're saying that. I can feel
yeah,
what that feels like. I've been there with that panic. I got to get out of here.
and it was terrible. Like I wanted to have fun while I was there, but
Mhm.
I couldn't. And then I was talking to this lady, and I told her like, I was like, man, I'm hurting. And she told me before youth group, she told me that night, the Antoine people see on screen isn't the Antoine people see in person. And that just like broke me because I realized I'm extremely broken and I'm trying to put on this mask, but it's not fooling anybody. And
Nope.
so the next day I was like, you know what? I need to just take a step back for a couple weeks. I need to figure some things out. And so the church I was working at, they were like, well, we'll give you 4 weeks, find like some counseling, things like that. And so I ended up going to Colorado for 10 days. There was like no technology, no anything, and it was an extensive like counseling with 7 other people. And I got back from that, and while I was there, I just got the huge sense that I I needed to step down from being a student pastor because I couldn't keep doing it while I was sitting here living this completely other life. Like uh, I was driving prostitutes to their licks and selling drugs and doing all this stuff while I was fronting as a student pastor.
Mhm.
And so I said I need to step down. So when I got back, I told them like, hey, like this is what I took away. I still hadn't told anybody what I was doing, but I just told them I just have to. I'm not in the right mind to run this ministry. And so I stepped down, and for a couple weeks I wasn't smoking and everything. Um, but then I started talking to this one girl, and it's she ended up sleeping with my best friend, and that just like put me in a downward spiral. And I ended up moving back to Rochester. I was in Geneva when all that happened. Ended up moving back to Rochester and started staying in my car with 3 other people that had saved me in January because I had OD'd in January. And we were living out of my car, and that's when everything went down. But even then, that lie of like continued from like first it was, oh, I'm not going to touch this, and now that I'm living in my car, out of my car, and smoking crack every day, I used to say I was a social smoker, and I'd be like, you guys are crackheads. I'm a social social
It's like
social smoker.
it's like sitting in the bar and saying, "I'm not as drunk as the guy at the end of the bar."
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, and then in this journey of recovery, I've realized, no, bro, you were a full blown crack addict,
Yeah.
and and because I used to like be by they would all do heroin as at like with their crack, but I didn't. So there were multiple times all 3 people, or even like if other people got in the car, we had let's say like 6 other people, they'd all nod out, and as they're nodded out and I'm sitting there by myself, I'd light them up. So how social is that when everybody's passed out and I'm sitting here hitting the pipe?
I mean, it's
It's not
about as
that
social.
social.
Well, I mean, it's about as social as it gets with that lifestyle. You know, um, I'm curious. As some of the things that you're acknowledging sound. I mean, I feel your pain, and it sounds like a cycle of things that you're dealing with. And I'm glad that you're getting some support because this is not something that's going to go away just from good intentions. Just like I'm not going to stay sober with good intentions. Sammy,
Absolutely.
our family is not going to be healed with her good intentions. There's going to be
Absolutely.
work, and she's putting in her work. I put in my work. You're putting in your work. But I'm just curious, do you feel like you've got a sense of where things start to the small compromises? Because I know for me, my addiction, and with Sam as well, we've noticed that there's a small compromise that happens way ahead. Do you know what that
Mhm.
is for you yet?
Um, I don't know if I realize what it is yet. I realize certain triggers that make me feel like, okay, I want to start using,
What
but
are
I
your
don't. So rejection is a big one.
Yeah, I can see
Like
that.
if I feel like, for instance, my son, he doesn't talk to me right now. Like my so I helped raise my oldest since he was 3, and then we raised my nephew who's 9, and we raised him, and so they still don't really want to. They'll talk to me like the youngest will on Xbox, but he still doesn't want to like see me. So I I remember one time I had asked him to if I could see him. He said no. And then I think it was Memorial Day. I asked my parents if I could go over and hang out with them, and they told me no. And so I felt like all this rejection, and I just thought like I could easily go to the city right now and just smoke my pain away.
Right.
Um, and so it's different things like that. I remember one time I was watching the show Intervention, and the first show I was watching, first time I've watched it since my addiction. The first episode, the lady smoked crack, and she was explaining the feeling that she was getting as she was taking a hit, and I was like, "Yep, nope, have to turn this off,"
Yeah.
because just her
It's
explaining
triggering.
that feeling,
It's
I was
triggering.
like, "Man, I really want to go to Rochester right
No,
now."
I feel it. But here's the thing is like, this is where we screw ourselves up too. Because that one more use that we do, we're like, what's the difference? No, they're all rejecting me anyway. If I use one more time, it's no big deal. It's only one more time. But the problem is that you're one more time removed from ever healing that situation. Every
Absolutely.
single time every single time that you deprive yourself of that urge, and every victory you have over that moment, every single one of those is one step closer to the life that you actually want. And that's not pie in the sky. I'm talking to you as a homeless person from 2017. I'm talking to you as a person that has had multiple mistakes in my life that I find that those compromises I make it so much worse. I'm in a situation right now in my home that we're trying to salvage our home and rebuild our home with 2 people that actually love each other and we're very committed to each other. Addiction has torn our home apart through all kinds of matters, and it's all comes from those situations where we get the screw it's. It's like, what's one more? Who freaking cares? It's like kind of
Yeah.
a mess anyway. But the thing is like what I sense in you, um, you have a tremendous power about you to be an ambassador of hope for people. I've just met you. The rejection that you're feeling, I believe, is a spiritual component to push you out of your sweet spot. Because if you stand there and fight, you're a bouncer. You're not afraid to fight. If you get on the balls of your feet, chomp down on the mouthpiece, and go to war with your addiction, you're going to save lives.
Yeah.
Because there's plenty of people out there that feel rejected. And maybe just because you understand rejection, you can be the person that doesn't reject them. Maybe you can be the healer from them because you know what they feel more than any other person could. Rejection is not a trigger for me. Fear, procrastination, and controlling behavior are my triggers. They all dance together in a circle, but you have this empathy about rejection because you know how debilitating that is for you. How much power can you deliver in somebody else's life that also feels that? There's a lot of kids in this world right now that feel exactly what you're feeling. You're a prevention machine. And I believe it. I mean, I hear it in your voice. And the thing is, too, is you also have the knowledge of a God that exists and is real. But he can't be
The one who
veneers.
doesn't reject us.
He does not reject us, and he should. But you look at how, I mean, I don't know about what you think about you, but I know what I am.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why are you looking at, why do you
Well,
want me?
there's days where I wake up and I'm just like, why? Like, and of course the answer is nothing. Like, but what have I done to like deserve to like draw breath when I wake up in the morning? Nothing. I've like if you
Who
look
has?
at like from currently us talking all the way back to I can remember, I have done absolutely, if anything, like like just like what the Bible says, for the wages of sin is death. Like everything I have done, like, has been to, like, earn death, and it feels like from where I sit and just in my recovery, like all this stuff, like me being a student pastor and me being a husband and like all this stuff, I think I was trying to, like, looking back now, just on my relationship with Christ, knowing I grew up in the church and things like that. I was going through motions of things that I thought
Yeah.
he wanted me to do,
Parachutes.
and things that I thought, like, okay, like my life sucks right now. Maybe if I become a student pastor, my life won't suck.
Yeah. I
No,
feel
your
you.
life is just gonna suck, and now you're gonna be a student pastor with the potential of ruining people's lives.
Well, the thing is, like for you, is that life is not about death. I mean, that's what addiction does to us. It steers us towards our lowest common denominator, especially when our self-esteem is not where it's supposed to be. You don't have to be cocky. You don't have to be a pastor to fix everything. Being a pastor isn't going to fix shit. You know what I
No,
mean? It's not
not
going
at
to fix
all.
jack shit. And you can read the Bible all you want, and if you're not living a life that's looking to glorify a king that said, "I love you enough to keep you alive, and I want you to go save people's lives." If that's our purpose, really, I mean, in the end, it's not about any value I give. I can tell you, I'm the biggest jackass ever walked on the planet. There's nothing that I have to offer anybody except for a heart that says, "I've been where you're at. Walk with me for a minute. I think you can find some traction."
Yeah,
You don't have to heal anybody, but your story, I'm telling you, can plant seeds of hope in people all along the way, because you feel things that I've never known, and there's plenty of people out there that feel exactly what you feel. That connectivity that says, "Look, I don't have it today, but I'll fight alongside of you, and we'll just figure this thing out."
yeah,
It's not some coat you put on to say, "Look, oh,
no.
look at me, I'm doing good."
See, and that's what, like, one of my favorite things to say about crack is that it I I traded, uh, my life in for a tiny bag, $30 to $40, depending on where you are,
Mhm.
for a tiny bag of temporary peace.
Yeah,
And like in all this rejection that I've felt, and a lot of times too, like against my own will. Like one thing we talk about in therapy is that a lot of things have happened that, like, I've had no, like, say over. And it's not like, oh, Antoine, hey, we're gonna move. Is that okay with you? Like, no one's gonna ask that, but like, in with rejection coupled with, like, man, I didn't even ask for this. Like, and so it when I first took that hit, and then I kept taking hits. I didn't feel rejected by the people I was smoking with. I didn't feel rejected by the prostitutes that would come by my car. I didn't feel rejected by the dealers. Like, they're not going to reject me. If anything, they search me out to find me.
yeah. Well, the thing
and,
is,
and
it's all
and
a
I didn't
hustle.
feel, what's that?
It's all a hustle. I mean, everybody in that circumstance you just described is using you for something.
Absolutely. Uh,
It's not belonging.
and that's and even the drug, like, I didn't feel rejected by the drug either. Like, it embraced me. And
Mhm.
so, but now on the other side of it, I realized, like, yeah, I didn't feel that rejection, but at the same time, I was showing value and showing importance to people that didn't value me or know what my importance was.
Let me ask you, how many people do you think from that circle that was hanging in your car even think about you in a day right now?
There's one, I'd say, uh one of them, and
Right,
that's because he's 98 days clean, around 98 days clean, and him and
right.
I talk like every day.
Right.
And then, like, it was his girlfriend and her sister. They they messaged him and asked about me, but that's because we were family and they saved my life. But everybody else, when I'm in the city to go to group and I see them on Lyle, like, they're living their best crack life ever.
Yeah, but they don't even know you were one of the come and goes.
Absolutely,
There's always a character with a car. There's always somebody that's going to get you where you
absolutely.
got to get. That's the thing that Sam got caught up in with her stuff too. Is that she was being used and by for her vehicle and everything else, and it was it was convenient because she also was seeking things as well. And for me, that people that I can tell when people are in active use because the first thing they do is ask me for money for groceries.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, are you kidding me?
Or gas.
Yeah,
Or gas.
why do you need $40 every time you call me for groceries and gas? You know what I mean? You know, it's like, get out of here. But
And that's and I was talking about that with the one guy who lived in my car with me.
mm,
Like it got to the point where like because I always told myself and I saw myself going lower and lower in stages. Like because when you have people who are willing to give you money, like you don't need to go and do this grimy stuff to get your drug. And so I'd be reaching out to people at church and reaching out to this person and that person, like, and then eventually people are like, "Yo, bro, you asked me for $20 last week. Like, I'm not giving you $20 again." And so once you start losing those connections, then you're like, man, I still need this drug though.
mhm.
And so then do like boosting. I used to tell the people in my car, nah, we're not gonna boost. We don't need to do that. By the time I got off the street, April 18th, I remember a couple days before like my last day on the street, we had gone to Walmart and hit a huge lick from like boosting. So much where they were like, pick whatever you want. I picked like Starburst and the Nerd gummies and then we went and we were able to get drugs for the whole day. And so I look back now and I'm like, I see like where I started doing. I put a hit out on a girl for $40 because she took $40 of mine, doing stuff that I never would have even dreamed I would do.
Mhm.
And now I look back, I'm like, what was I thinking?
Yeah, but that's what people don't understand that have never had addiction, and that's why our community has a hard time accepting us back in as rehabilitated, because they don't understand that there is a fundamental difference. We're literally insane. You look at what
Yeah,
you go through the big book, and you go through the things that we understand, and we really are insane in active use. It's just an actual fact. It's not a suggestion. It's not hyperbole. We are actually insane, and
absolutely.
yeah, and so we do insane things, and for men we do middle brain things. You know, we're cavemen, hunt,
Absolutely.
procreate. You know, we're all over the place. You know, and we're David, but David wasn't on drugs, I don't think. David and Psalms.
I used to tell people, if you're getting in my car, I want cash, gas, crack, grass, or ass. Like those were my 5 things.
Yeah,
If you couldn't give me any one of those 5 or a combination of, then
get out.
why are you even in my car?
No, I hear it. Yeah, no, it sounds about right. Well, we're kind of running a little bit long here, but I love your story because I think it's going to have a lot of impact. And what I do want to ask you though is for some advice. You know, what advice would you give to a younger you that
Uh,
would avoid all this?
I think a couple things. The first is uh, don't be afraid to say when you're having a bad day. Like um, like I said, and this even happened before I became a student pastor because the army put it in me. Like if something's going wrong, you don't tell anybody.
Mm.
You suck it up, Buttercup. Drink water and drive on. Like that's
Yeah,
what they used to
hydrate,
tell me in
hydrate,
the military.
hydrate or die. That's your
Yeah.
solution for everything.
So like, and that works for a little bit, and it seems big and macho for a little bit. Um, until you get addicted to crack.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the number one thing is like don't be afraid to say I'm having a bad day. It's okay not to be okay.
Mhm.
And I think that's what started our your and my conversation, just men's mental health. Like I think as men, and I'm like I told you, like I'm working to try to get this a podcast started, like
Mhm.
about men's mental health because it's we think that we have to be big and bad for everybody and that we can't show that we're going through something, but
Right.
I wish I would have known it's okay to not be okay. Because I think a lot of the things that I've gone through, I wouldn't have had to go through if I was just willing to open up and talk to somebody.
Well, that's the thing. I think that's excellent advice because as men, and I, I know that we're in a society that has blurred lines, I guess, about that, but I don't. As men, we have to allow ourselves to fall once in a while. We don't have to succumb to it though, and stay there. I think there's two things that we do all the time. So we either hide it or we succumb to it.
Hmm.
I like the idea of just traveling along with people alongside of me and saying, "Well, you tripped. I got you. Let's go.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, that's why the Bible
you don't have to
says
go on your own.
go with people.
Yeah.
Like,
You don't have to go on your own. You know what I mean? You don't have to do this alone. And I'm telling you, Antoine, I'm telling you from Chris to you, you don't have to do this alone. And that's a commitment I'm making to you because of our connection. I don't want you to struggle like you did before. And anybody watching this show right now, you don't have to struggle either. There's a whole community of us out here. Antoine and I just met. I'm now his fellow traveler. And when he's tripping and having a hard time, I'm in. And I don't care what you got to say to me because I've heard it all. I've probably been around most of it. I want you to rise. And I think you're fully capable of. And if you're going to be doing a podcast or whatever else, man, you're going to change lives. For sure.
I think people, not people in addiction, because we understand it, just like you said. But I think if anybody's listening that isn't in addiction and you're supporting people, like, don't be too quick to let people go.
Yes.
And because I think every addict has a group of people in their life that was there in their life before addiction that aren't there in addiction or after addiction.
Yeah.
And it's because people are quick to say, like, well, I don't want anything to do with you now. And I understand to a point, like, because they're trying to protect themselves, but at the same time, like, it sucks. And
it does.
Yeah.
It does. But you know what's so interesting to me about that? As they're doing the very same thing we're doing. We're using a drug to hide from our reality, and they reject to hide from the reality.
Yeah.
We're both hiding from reality. And you know, the thing is I was popping off a little bit on the show. I do a daily journal sometimes over on TikTok because I'm kind of tired of people coming and going, well, you know, you did this to yourself, you know, this crap, you know, they're doing it with Sam right now.
I hate when people say that.
Oh yeah. Sam's struggling. I mean, this is somebody I love with all my heart. It's a mother of my freaking kids. I want her to thrive. I want her to do well. The worst thing in the world is for people to come up and go, well, you know, you shouldn't have done this. It makes me so friggin' angry. Shut up.
Thank you. I never thought of that.
That's exactly what I said. If you look at, I swear to God, watch what I put out on there. I said this. I'm like, oh, thanks. We didn't realize that. You know, appreciate the advice.
I've never sat and thought, man, I shouldn't have picked this up.
Exactly. I called him Captain Obvious. I forget what I don't know if it's on TikTok or on this channel. I can't remember, but I was so freaking mad because we get that all the time. But you know, I had the same thing. I had an aunt tell my parents when I was going through the worst of it, just get him out, get rid of him. And it's like, yeah, that's going to work. What ditch do you want to throw me in and just leave me there? Throw me in some dog food and then just walk away. And that way your life's all happy again because you got rid of the addict.
And and I think too, like, my big thing is rejection. And now you reject me.
Yeah.
Like you're like, oh man, we don't want you to be in this addiction. And now you're like, well, thanks for coming out, but now we don't want to talk to you.
Yeah, tell me what level I got to get in this video game of life that you like set me again. You know, what boss level do I got to? Anyway, but I think we're on the same page with that.
Definitely.
I'm super thankful you came on the show. I hope that you were able to get some of your message across. I know these are a little bit shorter. You know, we can talk about having you back on again at some point. But
we'll have to do a part 2.
Part 2. But no, it sounds like I mean, you can't be preacher without having a lot to say, right?
Absolutely.
But, man, I'm thankful you came on the show. I really am. I love your story. I feel your struggle. Like, it's evident that you still struggle with that. Whatever choices you're making today, make them be forward operating choices. Make progress today. You don't have to go back anymore. You literally don't ever have to go back anymore. And I'm telling you, I will be a fellow traveler with you. That you don't have to be alone.
And I think that's another big thing is, I think, to people in recovery, like, because like you said, you don't have to go back, but there are days and decisions that push us back sometimes in recovery. Because we're trying to, like, I look like crack messed up my mind. Like, because things that I once called unacceptable, I now look at as acceptable. I'm having to retrain my mind on, no, this is bullshit.
Yeah.
And so I think having grace with yourself, like when you do have moments where you're like, ah, man, I probably shouldn't have done that. Uh,
Yeah, our shock level goes way down after a while.
Absolutely.
You know,
There's a lot of things like people show me on their phone, like, look at this. I'm like, oh man, cool. But
that's
before I would have been like, oh,
oh my God. Yeah. No, I mean, I've been exposed to a lot, with Sam's addiction too. That kind of gave me another perspective as well. And man, it takes a lot to shock me anymore. But anyway, well, I'm thankful that you came on. We'll definitely talk again when you figure
yes,
out what your
sir.
podcast is. Let me know. We'll promote it. I'll push it where I can and let people know
Awesome.
about it. You got a lot to say. But
It's gonna be called Preacher's Corner.
Preacher's Corner sounds good to me.
Preacher's Corner.
All right, Preacher's Corner. When are you going to launch that?
Hopefully, I want to make sure to get, because I'm living in a resident place right now.
Yep.
And I'm waiting until January to move into a permanent. So I'm gonna wait for that transition to happen.
Why wait?
You know what? Why wait? You're right.
I mean, the thing is, because early on you're going to make some mistakes in the show. You might as well figure them out and then get your studio set up the way you want it.
Facts. You know what? You're right. You're right.
The first couple ones I've done, like I started out something called iBlock Chronicles. Now it's just a blog. That was just on a computer with a camera, and I got used to the cadence of things. And then we did 100 Proof Living, and then now I've got Chris and Retro. It takes a while to grow to that point. Might as well start now. I'd start within a week.
If I don't do it, then I'll be like, oh well, I'll do it later. Yeah, so you're right. Just start it. Absolutely.
So Friday is what? What's the date? What's this Friday?
21st is a Wednesday. 22nd Thursday, so 23rd.
23rd. Yeah. Give yourself a 23rd due date and at least get the first one out. You don't even have to publish it. Just get it recorded.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
Get 6 on the shelf before you launch. That's the only advice I'd give you.
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, thanks for coming. I really appreciate it. Thanks for being here. Your advice is outstanding. The audience that is listening to this show, we went a little longer today, but obviously it was necessary. There's some stuff that Preacher's sharing on here that is massively important and very detailed, related to what many people go through. You can't throw people out. We're human beings. It's not just that he struggles with rejection. You can't take addicts and make them labeled and throw them out. You cannot. Unfortunately, you have to deal with our situation because it is impacting your lives too. And
if honestly, not, it's going to get worse.
It's going to get way worse, way worse. So guys, appreciate you tuning in. Please like and subscribe. Check out the TikTok channel. I've got a few things over there that are interesting. But make sure if there's any comments you have in here, put them on here. We'd love to see what you guys got to say about it. And between now and the next time we talk, I'm going to do everything in my power to stay out of trouble, and I hope you do too.